Hey everyone, welcome back to my Study Fundamental series, where I talk about the fundamental study techniques that I used in my life in order to achieve 43 in the IB. Now the IB is a long game and you are expected to learn and remember 2 years worth of content, all for a short 3-week exam period. And therefore, because it's such a long game, in my opinion, the key to staying sane throughout the entire program is really about cultivating the right mindset and approach to the system. So first, I would like to talk about the value between process and the end result. The aim of the IB is for you to learn and grow and become a more smarter and interesting person. The end result is important, but it's also important that you take this as an opportunity to learn, because that's the point of education essentially. So I think putting yourself in a position which is detached from the end result and focused on the process can really put you in a place where you start to develop a more positive attitude and mindset towards your studying. What I mean by this is that I see a lot of people really overly focus on the end result, really overly focus on the end exams, and yes, they are important and they are kind of the North Star towards how you want to study. But what I think cultivates the most healthy mindset is having the goal as the North Star, yes, but not frantically worrying about it all the time, and instead really focusing in on the process of studying and the process of learning for the sake of learning. The process is where the value from education comes from. It's going through that process of the IB, the journey, the late nights, the stressful mini exams, the essays, writing, the rewriting. It's going through that process that's going to set you up to build habits of discipline, which are going to be helpful later down the line. If you start to think in terms of process and valuing the process of the IB and the journey value of learning for the sake of learning, then I think you're going to find yourself in a much better place, rather than just focusing on optimizing for the highest mark possible, which of course we want to do, but we also want to fall in love and enjoy the process of it all. That doesn't mean it should be easy and fun the entire time, but it can be made fun if you focus on it more and try to find the interesting parts about your study. Now I want to transition into talking about the concept of the growth mindset. More specifically, the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And if you can understand the difference between the two, it can really become a powerful thing in your learning and education. I'm going to leave a bunch of resources down below, so if it doesn't fully click in this video, I want you to check out these other videos, because if you just watch a bunch of them over and over again, you'll start to get it, and that's just going to solidify in your mind. So let's talk about the difference. Having a fixed mindset is when you believe that your qualities and traits are fixed and cannot be changed. People who have a fixed mindset attribute all of their success to their natural intelligence and inherent talent. They ignore any work or effort that they put into and just assume that it was just naturally done. They see their weaknesses as something that they cannot change, and their intelligence level and all of their skills as something that's fixed. In a school context, this would be when someone's getting 3s and 4s in a subject, they would just naturally assume that they're not good at that subject and there's no way that they can improve. They just accept that they're stupid and think there's nothing they can do to change that. They think that effort has nothing to do with success, and it's all about talent and natural ability. Alternatively, having a growth mindset is where you believe that your intelligence and skills can grow with experience and time. You believe that you can become smarter, and you recognize that you can accomplish your goals and achieve certain skills so long as you put in the time and effort to make those things happen. With a growth mindset, you essentially believe that you can basically be good at anything so long as you put the work and effort needed to be good at that thing. So here's an example to help illustrate this point and show you just how important having the growth mindset is versus having a fixed mindset. So this somewhat anecdotal analogy was popularized by Carol Dweck. I'll leave her video in the description below, but it basically goes like this. So essentially they had a group of kids and they split them up into 2 groups, and they were each given the same problem, which was relatively easy. So because the problem was quite easy, pretty much all of the kids were able to solve it. To one group of kids, the teacher told them that they were able to solve the problem because they were naturally smart and gifted, and therefore it was their own natural talents that got them to be able to solve this problem. Then for the other group, the teachers told them that the kids did a good job and that they were able to solve the problem, not because they were naturally gifted or talented or whatever, but because they put in the right amount of work needed and effort needed to solve the problem. So essentially they were setting up one group of kids for having a fixed mindset, whilst they were setting another group of kids for having a growth mindset. And after they gave them this first puzzle, the next day they gave them a second puzzle, which was significantly harder. The kids from the first group gave up quickly, didn't put much effort into solving the problem, and were quick to say things like, "I'm not smart enough to do this problem. I'll never be able to do this problem. I'm just not intelligent enough." They were discouraged because they weren't able to solve the problem, despite the fact that they didn't actually put in that much effort to try and solve it. They just thought that because they couldn't get it immediately, they were too stupid to get the problem. Alternatively, the kids with the growth mindset in the second group, they stuck at the problem for significantly longer and actually worked to put in a significant amount of effort into the problem, and eventually they were able to solve the problem because they had the growth mindset and self-belief within themselves that they can do it. The people in the growth mindset appreciated the challenge of the problem, whilst the people with the fixed mindset saw that problem as like a threat to their own natural intelligence. The difference in mindset and believing that you're stupid versus believing that you can grow is, in my opinion, what keeps a lot of kids from moving from 4s and 5s to 6s and 7s. Initially, when I first started the IB, I had the fixed mindset that I was just not a language person, and I just like thought that I was just naturally bad at languages. And I thought that like I just couldn't do anything about it, I would never learn Indonesian, and I would just be really crap at writing forever. But I really wanted to get better at my communication skills, and I wanted to be able to write better, and I wanted to get better at Indonesian. But I felt like it was just like impossible. But then I did start to read more about the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, and then I kind of just decided and like told myself that, hey, as long as you just like continuously put in the effort, cultivate a sense of discipline, and just push at it and believe that this will lead to your growth, then eventually you're going to get better. And this is essentially what I did, and this is how I essentially moved from 4s and 5s to 6s and 7s. It was just through sustained effort over a long period of time, coupled with the self-belief that I would grow eventually as long as I kept doing that. The growth mindset asks you to get comfortable with failure, whilst the fixed mindset sees failure as the start of your inevitable demise. Don't want to have that. So here are some mindset changes that I implemented throughout the IB so that I would work towards developing more of a growth mindset. So whenever I like messed up on a test or I didn't do good on an exam, I would spend 0 seconds dwelling over it or beating myself up about it or getting mad at myself for having done badly on the test, which happened multiple times, just for the record. Like, I'm not a perfect student. I've had like, 55% before. Instead, I would just recognize this, have that self-awareness of this is where I'm at the moment, but so long as I put in that sustained effort, as long as I put in the time and effort to grow, then I'll be able to fill in the gaps in my knowledge and improve. Whenever I failed, I didn't cry about it. I saw it as like a challenge to do better next time. The worst thing that I think happened to me in my IB is at the start of the year when we did a math test and I got 100% on that test, because that put me immediately into a fixed mindset of, okay, you're the kind of person that gets 7s in maths easily without much effort. And this was a shit state to be in, because whenever I didn't get 100%, I would like beat myself up for it and I would feel devastated. Similarly, in English, when I first handed in my first essay, I didn't get many corrections back. And so I learned to expect when I handed in an essay, it wouldn't come back with many corrections. And I would be devastated when I would get back an essay and there would be like so many corrections and suggestions all over it. And this was bad because I wasn't in the growth mindset. Whenever I failed, I saw that as like some sort of weird personal attack against my intelligence, which is just not what you want to cultivate as a mindset in your mind. I shouldn't have taken all of those corrections as like a personal attack against me or whatever. I should have taken them as like a challenge to like get better and improve. Alternatively, in physics, I was shit from the beginning. My first test that I got back was a 56%. But for some reason in physics, I didn't see that as a failure. I honestly just saw that as like a challenge to improve, because I felt like I could improve in physics for some reason. I was just like, yeah, well, this is just gonna like get better over time, so who cares? And yeah, eventually as I started to read more about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset, I started to feel a lot less bad about myself when I got a test back and it wasn't as good as I was hoping it to be. And instead, I just took that simply as a challenge to improve. And it's actually really good that you like mess up on a test sometimes, even if it's silly mistakes, because all of those mistakes you make on the test are going to be mistakes that you're hopefully not going to make later down the line when you actually do the real exams, because you're going to be able to see those mistakes that you made and fix them. I think Yuval Harari said it really well when someone asked him what is the value of school, and he said the most valuable thing that you can get out of school is learning to deal with failure. I heard another quote which said that the master has failed more times than the beginner has tried, or something like that. It was this like growth mindset that I had when I started to approach doing past papers. If you approach past papers expecting that you're gonna get like a lot of them correct, that's not a good mindset to have. My mindset for when I was doing the past papers was, I'm gonna do really, really bad at the start, but then hopefully as I do them over and over again, I'm just gonna get better and better with each one I did. And that's basically what happened. You start off getting 4s and 5s, sometimes 3s on your past papers that you do because you don't know anything yet. But then over time, with sustained effort, and as you do them over and over again, you work your way up from 3s and 4s to 6s and 7s. This same mindset applies when you're doing your IAs and TOK drafts and EEs or whatever. I literally did 10 drafts of my TOK essay, and I'm proud I did that. Like, what I did is that I wrote a draft, I got it checked, I got corrections, and then I just wrote another one because I knew the first one was terrible, and then I wrote another one because I knew the second one was terrible, and then I rewrote the third one because I knew the third one was terrible, and I just did this over time, over and over and over again, until eventually I got a perfect TOK essay that I wanted. I wasn't expecting myself to just write a perfect TOK essay just right there and then. No, that's not a good expectation to have. You want to expect that, like, as you continue to write and rewrite, your writing and your essay is just going to improve over time. In my chemistry IA, you can watch my video where I talk about this. But essentially, I failed 2 whole experiments, and it was only on my 3rd experiment where my chemistry IA actually worked. I literally didn't care about the first 2 experiments that failed, and that you actually learn a lot more from failure than from your successes. I had a student asking me the other day, like, is chemistry always this hard in the beginning? Why does it seem so hard in the beginning? If you're ever thinking anything on the lines of that sort of reasoning where you're like, this is so hard at the beginning, just remember that that is completely normal and everyone experiences that in the IB. And just like have the growth mindset to believe in yourself that over time, as you continue to apply discipline and effort into the thing that you're trying to learn, you will eventually learn it. Everything will eventually start to fall into place, I promise you. This is incredibly important for the IB. I know a lot of people who just are able to convince themselves so quickly that they are not math people or they are not language people, and I think this holds them back a bunch. I think a better way to approach that is having the self-awareness to acknowledge that English or math is not your strength, but then acknowledging that you can improve on those skills as long as you put in the effort and discipline in order to do them. I originally saw myself as not a math person. I literally can't do times tables for shit like I did for languages. I just decided like, well, there's no hurt in trying, right? So like I just continued to put in that same level of effort, and at the start I was really bad, or like just terrible, but over time, as you continue to work at it, everything does kind of fall into place. However, I do want to push back against this theory just a little bit because sometimes it can be taken too far. In the book, The Unfair Advantage, the authors push for a reality growth mindset instead of just the growth mindset. And this reality growth mindset asks us to try and strike the balance between self-awareness and self-belief. For example, I think a lot of kids do hold back from dropping hard subjects because of this lack of self-awareness. Like for me, yeah, I do know that if I did work really hard, I would be able to do okay in Math HL, but I also had the self-awareness to know that I wasn't naturally amazing at math, and it would take a lot out of me to try and reach the standards that Math HL set. And so that's why I took Math SL. So it's not like just believing like, yeah, I can do anything and everything's easy and we're all on the same level playing field. It's not that. It's more like you want to cultivate a good level of self-awareness, which I think in the IB means knowing where you're at in the subject, like knowing where you are, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and not being afraid to admit your weaknesses while still having that self-belief, which is going to push you to grow and become better. If anyone tells you that you're just like not this or that, you're just like this, you're just like that, you can't listen to that. You gotta listen to yourself, know who you are, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and never give up, and always just try to improve. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys for this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and feel free to follow and DM me on Instagram if you have a question, and I'll see you next time.